There are no strings on me.
Alright, what is going on, everybody? It is your boy Carnage, your Primitive A.K. here, back with another video for you guys today. Today, we are actually covering some Battlefield 2042. Yes, I know majority of my fans are Call of Duty fans, but I did actually upload and play Battlefield quite a bit of some time ago, back in Battlefield 4 and Battlefield 1. If you look at some of my top videos, they were actually Battlefield videos, so I figured we revisit this game, and to kick things off, why not do a settings video? Because I will say right off the bat, and I'm sure a lot of you guys have probably been throwing your controllers across the room as much as I have, trying to figure out these settings inside of Battlefield 2042. There are a lot of complex settings that a lot of people may not fully understand what they do exactly, so we're going to be going through every single setting in this video. So this is going to be geared primarily for console players. However, I am playing this on PC and PS5, so I'll be catering to sort of both sides, just so you guys can understand exactly what my settings are, both for PC and PS5 controller settings. I will not be going through mouse and keyboard keybinds or anything like that, so if you're looking for keybinds, this is not the video to do it on, because I do not play mouse and keyboard, I play controller. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get right into it. So first things first, we're going to start with the general and just sort of work our way towards the right. Your inverted, I just leave this all at standard. I don't change any of these settings at all. Camera shake, you're going to want to turn this down all the way to 0. I believe that's set to about 50 or 100 by default. So you want to make sure camera shake is all the way down, because it's just there for visual looks. Every time somebody throws a grenade, your screen is going to shake a bit, or when there's explosion, it'll be some minor shake. So you just want to completely get rid of that. There's no need for it in the game, so it'll just make your gameplay a lot more enjoyable. All these settings, make sure they are on by default. It's entirely up to you if you want to turn them off or on. Obviously, crossplay, you'll get more players in your lobbies if you leave this on, so don't touch that. Communication, I leave voice chat on. I mean, technically, it's actually disabled right now, so this setting doesn't typically matter. But I sort of like to hear my teammates when they're talking, so when the game does actually come out, you'll want to enable voice chat, just so that way you can communicate with your teammates. If you're playing with friends in Discord, then you can probably just turn this off. But the rest of these settings, like I said, it's entirely up to you. I like to leave them as is. Network setting, I do like to show your network performance. This sort of gives you information on how your game is performing, whether or not you're lagging, packet loss, anything like that. This will basically show any type of data that may be affecting your gameplay. So you want to make sure that's on, but if you feel like you don't necessarily need it, you don't have connection issues, you can simply just turn that off. The rest of these settings, make sure you leave them as standard. Now, this is for PC players only, so if you're on console, you can go ahead and skip to the HUD settings and other areas of this video, but this is going to be for PC players. So full screen mode, I play on full screen. I have a 7 monitor setup. Yes, you heard that properly. I have a 7 monitor setup, but I do play on full screen, and it's set up for monitor 1. My graphics card, for those that are curious, is a 2080 Founders Edition. I do not have a 30 series card. I have a 2080 Founders. I play on 2K resolution at 144 Hertz. My monitor is 144 2K, so that's precisely why I'm playing on that. Field of view, you want to make sure this is at about 73. This is 73 field of view vertical, is essentially the same thing as 110 or 105 FOV in other shooter games. So make sure that is on 73. Vehicle third person field of view, I recommend you turn this up to about 100. Just that way you can see the maximum amount of visual. So that way you can see people on your left, right, in front of you, behind you. It just gives you the maximum amount of field of view for your vehicles. So you want to make sure that's on max. ADS field of view, make sure this is on. Brightness, I set this to about 50. Dynamic range, you can probably turn this off. It's entirely up to you. I don't really feel the need for it because I have individual monitor settings, which is why I have this off. Motion blur, set this all the way to 0. Motion blur is strictly only for visual aesthetics. It's to make your game look more realistic, because when you run or when you're moving around a lot, there's this blur in your vision. So that's precisely what that is there for, but you want to make sure that is off. For shooter games, that is always a no-no. Chromatic, film grain, vignette, I'm not sure how to pronounce that, and lens distortion, make sure these are all set to off. Once again, this is just to make your game look more realistic. My graphics preset, I have it set to medium. Now, you could turn this up to ultra, but this game is highly unoptimized now, so that's precisely why I just set this to medium, and I'm still able to pull over just about 80 to 90 frames on a 2080 Founders Edition, which is pretty good, especially for 2K graphics. Dynamic resolution scale, make sure you have this set to off. NVIDIA Reflex Low Latency. You can turn this on if you'd like to enable it and boost. It's supposed to help your game. I do actually use this for games like Warzone and Call of Duty, but I didn't notice any difference when turning this on, so that's precisely why I'm going to keep it disabled in this case. Future frame rendering, I leave this on. However, if you notice your performance issues, simply turn this off. Vertical sync, you can simply turn this off. This is just VSync, that's all it is. So make sure that's off. You don't want to have that because you may get some screen tearing. And for your HUD, I have the HUD on, obviously, camera shake amount set to 0, colorblind off. The rest of these are just settings that you want to tweak to your own sort of liking. Show kills made by self or nearby or all. I actually have this set to all. I like to keep track of what's going on. It actually does help, and I'll explain why, potentially in another video, why I have the kill feed on all. But if you feel like it's a little bit cluttered, you can set this to just your squad mates. So you can only see kills and deaths from your squad mates. That's entirely up to you, but I like to set it to all. Now, these headshot colors, kill indicators, and armor hit indicator color, you'll have to play around with these. These are entirely up to you. My crosshair color, I'm probably going to actually change the crosshair color to maybe a different color, but I'm not entirely sure what I would change it to, so that's why I decided to just leave it as is. Kill color is set to red. I might actually just set this to like black, but like I said, you'll have to tweak these to your liking. I may actually go back to Battlefield 4 to figure out what my settings were on that game, because I did actually change the colors there, but this is really all personal preference. If you're fine with the way the colors are, just leave it on default. Minimap, background opacity, set this to 10, rotating with view, make sure that's on, so that way the map rotates when you rotate. HUD icons, I leave this all on default, 100, 100, 100, 100, 100, that's really all up to you. Your sound settings, these are settings you're going to have to tweak depending on your own setup. I have Astro mix amps. I have an Astro A40 gaming headset with a mix amp, so that's precisely why I don't touch any of these. I control everything from my mix amp and also individual computer audio settings, but whatever settings you have on yours, you'll have to adjust to your liking. But music, you may actually want to turn this down to about 50, so that way it's not blaring in your ears throughout the entire match, because once the match is close to being over, the music does get a little bit loud, and you want to focus on hearing footsteps, so you may want to turn that down just a tad bit. But for the rest, you'll have to play around with. Audio mix, I was actually trying out War Tapes. War Tapes is actually an audio setting that is very similar to that of Battlefield 3 and Battlefield 4. So if you like that chaos that's going on around you at all times, you may want to turn this up to about War Tapes, since that basically is mimicking previous Battlefield settings. So you may want to check that out. That's just my personal preference. And audio in background, I have this set to off. It doesn't really do anything. Enables audio to play when game is not in focus. If you like that, you can simply turn that back on, but I don't really feel the need for it. And voice chat. Obviously, voice chat's not really enabled for this beta, so you don't have to worry about this tab. Now, controller settings. I have everything set to default here. So if you're on foot buttons and sticks, make sure sticks is set to default. You don't need to change anything there. If you are on a scuff controller, you want to make sure this is set to default. I have paddles on the back of my controller which enable me to hit buttons like circle and X with the use of paddle buttons on the back of the controller, so that's why I leave this on default. However, if you are on PS5, obviously there aren't many scuff controllers out for PS5, or scuff light controllers should I say. So if you have a default PS5 controller or a default PS4 controller, you'll want to turn this down to alternate. What this is going to do is alternate is going to make it so that way you can slide with your R3 button, and you can simply press crouch with the circle buttons with the R3 button, and melee will be your circle button. So it's basically going to flip those. It doesn't necessarily explain it here, which is kind of disappointing. It just sort of leaves you to figure it out on your own, but basically that's what that does. So alternate is essentially tactical button layout from Call of Duty. For those that play COD, you'll be familiar with that. The rest of these I set to default. I may change these when the game actually comes out, but I'm not really using aircraft vehicles or tanks at the moment, so that's why I just kind of leave these as is. I'm actually comfortable with the way the tank settings are. Now on foot, this is where things get a little bit crazy here, so make sure you guys are paying attention. Soldier stick aim sensitivity. You'll want to put this roughly to about 30 to about 50. That's about the sweet spot for most players. I think you'll be comfortable comfortable with that because they don't really explain any of these things very well. So personally, 36 is what I actually had for Battlefield 4, so that's precisely what I'm going to be turning it to in this game. It's a little bit faster, but I actually do have control freaks on my controller, which is why I have this a little bit higher. If you don't have control freaks or you don't have a raised right stick, you want to turn this down to maybe about 25, maybe even 20, but that's really up for you to decide there. You're going to have to go into a match, sit in the back of your spawn and play with these settings and figure out what is best for you. Inverted vertical, this is something you don't really want to touch, but it's personal preference. Some people do actually like that. Field of view, make sure it's on 73. ADS field of view, make sure that is on. Basically, what this means is that if you play Call of Duty Modern Warfare or you play Call of Duty Warzone, what this does, it changes your field of view while you're ADSing. So if you have this off, it's going to default down to 80 FOV when you ADS. And when you're not ADSing, it's going to turn it back to 73 field of view. So you want to make sure that's on. Basically, what that's going to turn your aim is to effective. Soldier sprint, you'll want to turn this on toggle. You don't really need to change any of these here, so we're going to go down further. These are all default settings, so I don't recommend you change any of these. Soldier zoom aim sensitivity, this is going to change the sensitivity while you're ADSing. So I actually turned this roughly to about 40. I may actually turn this down to about 36, but roughly you want to make sure that the soldier zoom aim sensitivity is very similar to that of your soldier stick aim sensitivity. So make sure those are either exactly the same or at least somewhat close. Parachute auto deploy, I have this on off. I like to choose when I deploy my parachute. Vertical stick aim ratio, now by default this is going to be at 18 and 36. What this is doing, so when you have your vertical stick aim ratio, for some reason this is basically changing your vertical aim ratio and how fast you're going to be aiming at a vertical scale. I'm not entirely sure why they felt the need to put this default at 18 and 36, but I spent hours, and I kid you not, I spent hours trying to figure out what the heck this setting does, and to be honest, I'm still not 100% sure what these settings do, but I put this at 50 and 50, put this number exactly the same as it is for vertical stick and vertical zoom. Like I said, I'm not 100% sure, guys. I'm going to be completely honest. I'm really not sure what this setting is doing, but I actually kept these numbers exactly the same and put it at 50, and it was actually very comfortable for me. I will play around with this more, and I'll update it in the comments box if I can figure out exactly what this is doing. But for now, make sure this is set at 50 and 50. Just leave it at that for now, and it'll be a much more comfortable setting for you. Coefficient, leave this on default, and this is for 1.0 zoom sensitivities. If you want to change these, you certainly can, but I personally didn't feel the need to do so, so that's why I'm just going to leave it as is. Global settings, make sure vibration is off. Now, for some reason, on PS5, I did turn the vibration off, and it was still giving me vibration. I'm not entirely sure why, but this does work on PC, so I turned controller vibration off. Vehicle settings, once again, this is something you're going to have to play with more. I actually have the aim ratio at about 32. And tank sensitivity is roughly at about 47, and vehicle third-person field of view, set that to 100, and the rest I pretty much have to default. Once again, this is very similar to the other sensitivity I mentioned, where I told you guys to leave it at 50-50. Whatever number you change these to, make sure they are exactly the same. Coefficient at 44. Controller tuning, obviously vibration off. Dead zone, this is going to be another iffy one that a lot of people probably are not going to be paying attention to. I'm not entirely sure what the default was. I don't remember what the default setting was on this, but whatever your default setting is, make sure center dead zone is as low as humanly possible. What this is going to do is this is going to tweak the responsiveness of your controller. So if your controller is absolutely flawless, you don't have any type of dead zone issues, you don't have stick drift, you don't have any type of drifting issues with your stick or controller settings, make sure this is set to roughly about 6. Don't go any higher than 10, but personally I like to keep it at 6. Axial dead zone and maximum threshold, these are set to default at 50 and 100. I don't recommend you touch those. I don't necessarily feel any difference changing these settings. Center dead zone set to 6 as well. Left trigger dead zone, turn this down all the way to 0. It should already be default to 0. And maximum input threshold, turn this all the way down to 0 as well. I'm not entirely sure why that's on 100, but basically putting on 100 means that you have a broken controller. That's essentially all that means. So I turn this all the way down to 0, so that way this is going to make your controller as responsive as possible. Joystick, if you're not using a joystick, you don't really need to worry about this, but if you do, turn it down to about 6. Mouse and keyboard settings, like I said, I don't really play mouse and keyboard, so that's entirely up for you guys to decide. I'll leave you guys to sort of figure that out. Accessibility, menu narration off, colorblind off, motion blur off, camera shake amount at 0, vibration off, reload hints on, and hints for controls on as well. It's just nice to have those on. Soldier sprint, I leave this all on default. I don't change any of these settings here, so what you currently see is what you should be having it at. And keybinds, like I mentioned, you should be adjusting keybinds to your liking. Like I said, I don't play mouse and keyboard, so that's why I don't necessarily feel the need to go through those. But anyways, guys, that's a lot of settings there. I hope you guys understood exactly what we were talking about in this one, because there's a lot of settings that people may not understand. If there are any questions or concerns that you may not be sure of on this video, leave it in the comments box, and I'll try to help you guys out as much as possible, because I was literally throwing my controller on stream because I was so frustrated with the way these settings are. I really hope DICE does a better job of explaining what all of these settings are, especially the dead zone settings and also the vertical sensitivities, stick aim ratio, especially these two settings right here. These need more clarification. But anyways, guys, thank you guys so much for watching. If you want more Battlefield content on the channel, let me know in the comments box down below. If you'd like to see my thoughts on the beta, I will leave those as well in a separate video. Just leave a like, and if we get enough support on this video, I may actually cover it. But anyways, guys, thank you guys so much for watching. It is your boy Carnage, or Primitive AK, signing out. Peace out, fellas.